So guys, you've all been waiting exceptionally patiently for me to bring out the first of my E5 tier lists. And it has been a long time coming, and I did mean to bring it out a few weeks ago, but as you guys know, I've been really busy and haven't actually been able to upload in a while. So this is the video I've been most looking forward to making since I've returned back to YouTube. And so here it is guys, the PvP tier list for July 2019 in the E5 meta. Since her release, Amon-Ra has flipped the Idle Heroes meta upside down. Her shields turn damage into healing, and she also turns opposing healing into damage. She just flips the whole game into this really weird dynamic. She's super strong, and if you build her with speed, she can outspeed some heroes, set up her shields nice and early, and she can really do some incredible stuff. I totally recommend Amon-Ra for anyone's team, and I know she's really hard to get. So actually, I'm really annoyed, because since they released her, she's kind of become that hero that if you don't have her, you're probably going to lose, and it really sucks. It makes it really hard to compete if you don't have Amon-Ra. So yeah, annoyingly, she is tier 0, but that's kind of what happens when they bring out a new light or dark. Moving across, we see Ada, and she keeps her top spot in tier 0 as well. The main thing that's keeping her up there is her active skill and the critical marks she gives that force opponents to take damage when they use their active skills. What's brilliant about these marks is they tear through shields, which means they can kill opponents even when their shields are alive, which is absolutely phenomenal. Asmodal does the exact same thing with his critical marks, so he ignores the E5 shields as well, which also, in my opinion, sets him up at tier 0. The fact that Asmodal can deal some incredible numbers, and redemption teams are being kept in the meta by Asmodal and Ada next to each other without even having to run Amon-Ra, says a lot for where Asmodal is in the current metagame. Looking down now to tier 1, we find Aspen, Mim, and Dark Arthendal for the Dark heroes in this section, and that should not really come as a surprise. Aspen has been strong since he came out. Mim does provide a fantastic passive skill, which isn't as strong as it used to be, bear in mind, because the E5 shields do kind of slow down how quickly heroes can die, but actually Mim still does do some fantastic passive damage. And also, we look at Dark Arthendal, and you've seen the videos on my channel where Dark Arthendal can deal incredible burst damage, and I would have had her in tier 0 if not for Amon-Ra coming out and being able to convert that damage into healing. That doesn't mean Dark Arthendal's bad. She's still fast and a great CC hero, and she does deal some incredible burst, and in my opinion, she's definitely probably the strongest Dark that is in the tier 1 section. But is she tier 0? Not since Amon-Ra came out, unfortunately. Moving across, we've got Ormus, who provides fantastic healing, and Penny, who is probably, since her release now, the best damaging hero that doesn't come from light or dark. Her active skill deals damage over time, and if it crits, it deals damage to all heroes. She's just brilliant, and she's also got this passive shields, one that protects her from CC, and another that reflects damage back at opponents. She's just a really interesting and well-built hero, and I definitely recommend it for any team, whether it's Rainbow, Redemption, or even non-Aura. She's just so good. I just really like Penny at the moment. Cruz, of course, has been in the game for a long time now, and he is as good as he's ever been. You know, he's got his passive skill, which can stun opponents, and he's also got his actives, which are brilliant for debuffing and providing energy for your team. Oberon, you'll now see in tier 1. Oberon's been a really surprising hero. When he first came out, he was kind of crap, but since they kind of buffed him and the Twine ability became that little bit better, especially when you run multiple Oberons. If you're running 2 of them together, it's brilliant. Like, they start buffing each other each time one of them twines, and we can see some fantastic redemption teams running multiple Oberons. We can see some great forest teams running multiple Oberons, and even in Rainbow, Oberon is arguably just as good a pick as Valkyrie. And that also sets me up to now move across to Valkyrie, and you guys know Valkyrie's always been a strong hero and devastatingly powerful when she came out. She's not quite at the tier 0 status she used to be, but she is still a fantastic hero, and full forest teams, redemption teams, and rainbow teams will get fantastic use out of her, and even non-Aura can find a place for her in their team. Looking down now to tier 1.5, this is where we find the heroes that I would still recommend people use, but they don't quite have that tier 1, tier 0 status. You've got Amavor, who can deal fantastic burst, but is slightly outshined by the other Darks. We've got Belrain, who provides great healing and support, and Faithblade, who provides really good stun and burst damage, and then there's Michelle, who is nice and fast, can resurrect herself, is control immune, and has that spot heal and also spot crit buff. Now, the thing you'll find with these 4 heroes at the beginning is they do provide that little bit of extra edge that's nice, and we do get some stun from Faithblade and Michelle, but you've got to remember stun is the weakest CC available, and Belrain, really, she's just helping your other heroes. She doesn't have like a really shining, fantastic ability. Annoyingly, the meta is so quick that the only thing that really allows Belrain to be on your team is speed, energy, and then her giving some heroes in your team an extra bit of speed. But that does mean that you have to build her away from her healing, which means she isn't as good a healer as she used to be, because you kind of do have to build her for speed energy right now, which is a little unfortunate, and it doesn't let you get the most out of her. Horus we can see as one of those heroes that has always been good, and he is arguably the best shadow hero available to us right now, but he isn't fantastic right now. He isn't up there with tier 1 because he does get buffs over time, and rounds are over so quickly that often you might find that Horus doesn't do much damage. Sometimes he can do a lot, other times he won't do that much at all. He is kind of 50-50, it depends on the team you're facing, and if you are against a sustained team, you might see Horus getting a lot of mileage, but if you're against a massive burst team that can kill Horus really quickly, you probably won't see him being as useful as he could be. And finally we find Valentino. Now Valentino some people do put a little bit lower, but I actually like Valentino for the fact that he is quicker than Amun-Ra. So if you give him speed and energy, he can potentially stun an Amun-Ra if it's a speed energy Amun-Ra, because it stops her getting her active skill off immediately, which is super useful. Now you do bear in mind that Amun-Ra can only be CC'd for 1 round, but that can make the difference between a win and a loss. So there is no point kind of getting a little bit upset now that he is a stun hero and stun is so well protected against when you consider there is a stun immune artifact. Valentino does still provide fantastic support and an excellent speed stat, which a lot of CC heroes really do need if they're going to be able to be in a tier to be good enough to counter Amun-Ra. Really, that's what you need from a CC hero at the moment. She is the biggest threat, and she is the hero we need to take down to be able to win. Looking down now to tier 2, this is kind of a tier that will make a lot of sense to many people. Aiden deals fantastic damage when he dies, and also buffs himself as your other heroes do die, so he's a great nuke hero that can deal a lot of damage to opponents. You do have to bear in mind that he could be completely wasted if he just triggers the opponent's shields and doesn't actually kill them, but a lot of the time Aiden can also play around this, and he's a fantastic hero to have. Jara we see in tier 2, and I really wish I could push her higher. The one thing that stops Jara from being any higher than she is if you build her for speed and energy, she is not fast enough to outspeed Amun-Ra, which means even though she does provide excellent CCs, Petrify and Freeze, annoyingly it's not enough because she isn't faster than Amun-Ra, and Amun-Ra is the big threat right now. Emily is a great hero to have on your team because when she's dropped below 50% health, she does buff your heroes, and she also provides, with her active skill, a speed boost for your entire team. And considering the current meta is really based on who has the quickest heroes, Emily can really help in that regard. Next, we've got Flamestrike, who is buffed each time a hero is burned. And with Phoenix coming out, this seems like Flamestrike could be a really exciting addition to teams. She isn't going to be fantastic, and she isn't going to be the best, but you can definitely get some synergy with Cthulhu, Valkyrie, and other heroes that burn. Even Penny burns. I actually forgot to put the symbol up there. I'll have to put that in an update, but Penny does burn too. So you could potentially see Flamestrike working well on one of those edgy redemption teams that doesn't really want to run Ormus or Valentino. Or you could also see Flamestrike in maybe a Justice aura, or a different team that we don't really see much of. Vesa and Demon Hunter are now the final 2 heroes in tier 2, and this is probably the most surprising for a lot of people. Now the reason I've put Vesa and Demon Hunter here is because they both provide silence. Since the guild tech upgrade, Freeze, Petrify, and Stun have all been countered against. They now are CCs that are given a CC reduction from guild tech. Twine is also one of the CCs that does that as well. Silence is untouched, which means Silence is currently a very, very strong CC because heroes cannot have any immunity to it, unless of course it's Amavor who is Silence immune, or a hero that is naturally Control immune. Now that's important because it means you can silence an Amun-Ra with a higher probability, and you have to bear in mind Demon Hunter is quicker than Amun-Ra, and Vesa silences with her passive, which can be triggered before Amun-Ra goes off, which means you can silence the Amun-Ra, and if you do, it means she isn't going to put up those nasty shields that convert your damage into healing. It is a strategy worth bearing in mind, and I think that's what warrants Vesa and Demon Hunter being moved up now from tier 3 and into tier 2. In tier 3, we finally get to that last group of heroes, which I would recommend, but only on specialised teams. It's Corpse Demon and Kammoth who are the big CC heroes for Shadow that can in some cases win games based on their CC. Unfortunately though, they're not great enough to warrant using against Amun-Ra's, and Kammoth could potentially outspeed Amun-Ra, but then people would just put Amun-Ra in slot 2 so she can't be hit by Kammoth's backline CC. I think Corpse Demon does offer a nice edge in the fact that he freezes when he's hit, so if you do put him on the front line, you could potentially stop an Amun-Ra from going off an additional few times. We have Cthulhu, who it works well on burn teams, but doesn't really have much use outside of that, except for the fact that he can completely stonewall Valkyries. And unfortunately, now we see King Barton down to tier 3. King Barton really has dropped since E5 came out, and whereas other heroes have really taken advantage of the buff, it's really not worked in King Barton's favour, and he isn't shining as well as he used to. Scary we see now in tier 3, which has kind of been where Scary's been for a while now. Scary is a good hero, but is exceptionally weak to CC and does need to rack up a few buffs before Scary can go off, right? But unfortunately, rounds are over so quickly that Scary doesn't really get the time to do that. Next, we've got Gru, and you'll see Gru has been moved up all the way from tier 5, and that's because Gru has been seeing himself increased in usage thanks to people now going down the route of building forest teams. And Gru does provide attack reduction to your opponents and is a really nice debuffer to have to help your heroes like Valkyrie and Oberon shine. Rosa as well finds himself in tier 3 for the similar reason that people are now choosing to use him on forest heavy teams, and Starlight is the final hero in tier 3, and that's because Starlight, she's always been alright. She's not bad, she's not good, and since her buff she does have an interesting mechanic where as your heroes die she heals and can deal a lot of damage, so there is cheeseability in Starlight. You do have to realise though that her big bursting active can be stonewalled by shields, which is a little unfortunate, but I have to say she is still a great hero. Now, as we come to tier 4 and tier 5, these two tiers are the heroes that I really would say you don't want to build right now. You don't want to make them E5. They're really not performing well, and I can't think of any teams I'd recommend them to be in. Tier 4 is where we're going to find the heroes that have been useful in the past and may be useful again. So we've got Dasmoje, who unfortunately just really isn't shining right now, and that's because he buffs himself as your heroes use their active skills. Unfortunately, rounds are over so quick that he can't really get much off, and he's quite slow, so he is weak to CC. Shah does single target damage, and that's just not great right now. Single target damage can just be stonewalled by shields, and you just waste a turn using her. So many heroes are just better, and it's unfortunate to see that she's just dropped tier by tier every time I bring out a new list, and it's annoying, but that's just unfortunately how the meta is shaped up. Assassins just aren't doing great right now. We've got Berea as well in tier 4, and a similar problem with him to Dasmoje is that he needs to buff himself as rounds go on. The meta's so quick and fast that it's really not looking like that's going to happen. Dantalion, you'll see, has been moved up, and that's because he does provide decent burn. He isn't right in the dumps tier now. He does have burn synergy for Phoenix, and he does deal some decent damage against opposing warriors. And you've got to think, we've got meta warriors now, we've got Asmodel, we have Aspen. It doesn't mean he's brilliant, but someone might squeeze a use out of him. That doesn't mean I'm going to recommend him as a hero, but it doesn't mean he's absolute trash. He could potentially have some use. Next, we've got Karim and Queen, who lots of people always consider to be two very similar heroes. One buffs himself as your opponents die, the other one buffs herself just as she gets hit and she steals crit from opponents, which is nice. The two of them do deal decent burst, but they're just not finding themselves in teams right now, and that's because Abyss just is in a really dodgy spot. No one really wants to be running full Abyss teams unless they're running loads of Scaries, and the only time you really do use an Abyss hero now is in Rainbow, and everyone just uses Cruz, because Cruz is absolutely phenomenal. So Karim and Queen do find themselves overshadowed for the similar reasons Dantalion and Berea. Just Abyss is a really awkward faction right now. Looking at tier 5, we've got Bade and Bloodblade, who really haven't done anything in the meta whatsoever. Walter, that I could rant about all day. The buff they gave him months ago ended up being a debuff, and he's just a shit hero anyway, so forget Walter, don't run him. Iceblink, unfortunately, now is down to tier 5, and that's just because he's so painfully slow for a CC hero. It really doesn't suit his build. Sigmund doesn't deal any damage, really. He's just so clunky, and even though he does strip armor away, that doesn't really make much of a difference in PvP. And finally, Heartwatcher. She does deal those fantastic marks that increase your team's damage, but they rack up over time. Rounds are over too quick for that to mean anything, so you're much better having healers and mass support heroes rather than just Heartwatcher, who is much better suited for PvE and really trash in PvP. So there you have it, guys, my PvP tier list, and if you want to admire this in greater detail, you can find a link down below, and that will also include my PvE tier list, which I will be releasing to YouTube tomorrow. Thank you so much, guys, for checking out this video, and if you've got any questions or any disagreements, I'd love to hear them down below. Do you think Silence is going to be a big CC moving forward? Do you think Burn Synergy is going to really matter alongside Phoenix? Is Amon-Ra going to keep her seat at the top? Well, I don't think that's much of a question. Of course she is. But it's an interesting set of heroes we've got at the moment. And unfortunately, some factions aren't doing great. Abyss and Shadow do need some love, but they are potentially getting new heroes soon. So all things could change again in the future. You never know. So yeah, guys, basically like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content and for new tier lists coming out in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you want to check out more of my content, you can find some videos here on the side. So guys, if you want to catch me in streams on a Thursday night, you can do on Twitch at 23:30 GMT. And if not, guys, I hope you have a great week and happy idling.